ability to research and present an unfamiliar topic, organize the speech clearly to maximize audience understanding, craft and clear and engaging transition between the different parts and the main sections, and also use and cite sources to support the speech content, and also make the source of the list available.
So, with a speech entitled History of Creation in the Standard Time Zones, please welcome up Anna Jane.
Good evening, students and Mr. President. So, before starting my speech, I want to start with the objective of my speech, what I want to cover in my speech, the contents. So, today's speech I want to take the audience back into the 19th century and want to explain what we were in the 19th century when we don't have a standard time zone, how we used to measure the time, how we used to refer the time in different places in the world, even in small towns and small cities, how we used to use the different times. I will try to explain why we came with the idea of creating a standard time and who proposed the standard time and what is the standard time that we use today. So let me start with my speech today, right? So these are the questions that I am going to try to answer in my speech. So let me start with the first question. So for the first question is why there was a need to create a standard time zone. Why somebody thought we should have a standard time zone. So it started with the Industrial Revolution in the 19th century, when there were a lot of innovation was happening in the transportation, the communication, and people were traveling to different places in America for their work, for their business, for other purposes. And surprisingly, because there was no standard time, every rail transport system was using its own time. So you can imagine every station has its own time clock. Every city, because the cities and towns were so much isolated, even a small distance town has a different time clock than the other small distance town. So people were traveling from one city to another, or even miles away, they were confused. The passengers were confused because they don't know in which time they started and which time they are finishing up. So this was all chaotic. Not just that, because the trains are moving from different destinations and reaching different destinations. So, because as I said, there was no standard time used by all the trains. So, it was difficult to manage the operations of the trains, to plan the schedule of the trains. And it was leading to some kind of accidents also. You can imagine, if one train is leaving from West Ruislip, the Central line is leaving from West Ruislip at the same time, which has its own time zone, and another Central line is leaving from Ealing Broadway. It could be scary to might have a collapse because they have no coordination of the same time zone. There was no central time zone that they can refer to. So these were all kind of problems. People were very confused. Rail managers tried to create some hundreds of railroads, but this was solving only few of the problems because the schedule and arrival and departure of the trains was not confined, was not definite. So then there was definite need to have a standard time zone. So in 1878, Sir Sanford Fleming, who was a railway planner and engineer, he came up with a system of standard time zone that we use today. So he proposed a system to the whole world, and he mentioned that the earth should be divided into 24 different time zones based on the exact latitudes of, I can show you, I've got a picture of. So you can imagine, he proposed that the world should be divided, this is the whole map of the world. He proposed the world should be divided into 24 different time zones based on the longitudes of the, and these longitudes are just the imaginary lines. Because the earth rotates 24 hours, the completes its rotation in 24 hours. That's why he mentioned that we should divide the world in 24 hours, and every hour, the Earth rotates 15 degrees, and the one hour is going to be the 124th portion of the whole world. That's why he divided the world into 25 to 24 zones, 24 time zones. So Britain played a very important role in that proposal, because at that time Greenwich Meridian system, Meridian time, was the most popular time zone system, because Greenwich Meridian time was the most accurate. Its reliability and its accuracy of providing navigational data to the world was very popular. It has got a standard time for England, Wales, and Scotland. So the world came very, I would say, the world make a very good consensus about the Britain's GMT time, Greenwich Meridian time, and so in 1884 there was a international conference for American time that happened in Washington DC, and it was the Greenwich Meridian time was proposed as the universal standard time. The railroads and other parts of the world have already adopted informally the Greenwich Meridian time, but it was formally recognized as the universal time around the world. And all other parts of the world were referring their time zones based on the Greenwich Meridian time that is following. So this was about the story about the history about the Greenwich Meridian time. And as I said, Greenwich Meridian time, because it was very popular during the time because of its accuracy and completeness and navigational data. So that's why the world adopted it. And nowadays, if we go in different parts of the world, we see that every part of the world, like Canada, United States, India, have different time zones. So if we talk to the people for business or family or some other parts of the world, we see they use a local time zone. If I talk to my family in India, they have their local time zone in British Standard Time. I'm in UK, I follow the British Standard Time, but we all refer to the same Universal Coordinate Time or GMT time. That's how the world refers. So we can imagine like all our systems in today's world, like our Android devices, iPhones, all our computer systems are always synced to the universal time zone, because a lot of updates and a lot of things, a lot of communication has to be universally coordinated and communicated. So this was all about the history of universal time zone, and I hope you enjoyed the journey with me. Thank you.
In a second, I shall ask you to vote for your favourite speaker of the night. But to remind us of the speeches and the times again, please welcome up our timekeeper, Rob Morrison.
Toastmaster, fellow Trojans, and most welcome guests. Before I tell you the times of our speakers, I've got another little tiny quiz. So here's the quote. Get ready to put your hands up if you know who it is. The common man, or woman in brackets, is not concerned about the passage of time. However, the talented woman or man is driven by it. takers, no timekeepers. Schopenhauer, apparently. There you go. So, time report. Our first speaker was Tanuj. So Tanuj, and he spoke for 6 minutes and 28 seconds. Our second speaker was David, and he spoke for 7 minutes and 19 seconds. And our last speaker was Amit, and he spoke for 7 minutes and 10 seconds. That concludes my time report.
For those of you that are new here, at the bottom of the slips there are 3 voting slips. The middle one is for best speaker. So reminder of the speakers again, Tanuj, David and Amit, please vote for your best speaker and so all the left slips. Please welcome back up, Joanne.
Good evening, Trojans. So, evaluation of the speech of Amit. So there was 3 main objectives in Amit's speech tonight. The first one was around organize the speech clearly and maximize the audience understanding. So on this, I think what was really well done from Amit is the introduction. The introduction was really like told us about the context of why at this time, this period, where people were moving, etc. The necessity of a time zone, standard time zone, was requested. So the introduction was very well done, I think. And overall, then the second objective of I think the second objective of the speech was to use transition that were making the speech clear and the development of the speech understanding and understandable for the audience. So I think, Amit, you've chosen to do a chronological order, which, given the topic, was making sense. I think it was, this really helps understand, so this is, so you gave several dates, this date, at this date, we decided to do this, etc. So that was, I think, on this side, very easy to follow the structure of the speech. Regarding the source, which was the third objective of the speech, I think you show us a map, so which helped us to understand what was, how were defined all the different time zones. So yeah, so that was all the good things of the speech. Then in terms of my recommendation, I think first there was the use of the word "so" was a bit repetitive, so something you can look after in your next speech. Regarding the source, I think I noticed the only source I noticed was the map, so maybe more source this. So where basically did you find the different information, etc. Regarding the map, I think the map would have deserved to be a bit bigger, because it was not very easy for everyone to see it correctly. Otherwise, I think the rhythm was a bit fast, so maybe something to look after next time. You can slow down, and sometimes it's a bit difficult to follow you because it goes really fast. And maybe also more repetition, so when you want to emphasize on something, which will make the audience, it will be easier for the audience to understand, and to also follow the different stage of the speech. Overall, I think it was a great speech. I've seen your first speech, and it was your second speech, and definitely there is some great improvement, so keep going. And Madam Toastmaster.
I'm going to give myself a bit of a break now, and we're going to move on to impromptu speaking. So, to lead us through this next section, please welcome up the table topic master for the evening, Melody Lager.
Good evening. I don't know whether I should have done a theme. I haven't got a theme, although I did write most of the questions at about 3 o'clock in the morning, one morning when I couldn't sleep, so maybe that will come across. So for the first question, that's going to be, are unicorns real? And that's going to go to Yiping.
Thank you very much for the topic. Can you just repeat the question again? Are unicorns real? Sorry, are unicorns real? That's a very interesting question. Not something that I anticipated before coming up here. So, are unicorns real? Well, to answer this question, what's the boundary for determining whether something's real or something's fake? Do you have to see it with your eyes for it to be real? Is God real? Has anyone seen God? It's the same with unicorns. Just because nobody has seen unicorns ever doesn't mean unicorns don't exist. And unicorns appear constantly throughout ages in stories. So why does it keep coming up in stories if unicorns aren't real? Why is it so, why do different authors come up with the idea of unicorns? So, I think unicorns might actually be real, but there hasn't been an opportunity yet for unicorns to appear in front of us. Just because they haven't appeared yet doesn't mean that we won't see them sometime in the future. Maybe they exist in a parallel universe. Who knows? Maybe we have to wait for 50 or 100 years until we know the answer. And that's the end of the speech.
And next up, not quite as abstract a question, is how do you define success? And that's going to Ewan.
I was missing the stage. How do I define success? Success can be defined as the opposite of failure. But then next question becomes, what is failure? And I can go very long time like this. Success. For me, success is really about depending on the objective you set to yourself. So basically, if you're not successful, it may be because the objectives you set to yourself are too high. So you simply need sometimes to take a step back, look, try to have a wider outlook, and understand whether what you consider as success or what you consider as failure is really success or failure. Maybe it's just a matter of how did you define your objectives. So basically, once you are able to set objectives where you are clear and which quiz you are very clear, so this is my objective. It's all about clarification. So, and that's probably what is the most difficult in life is clarify what is my objective, what I want to do. Once your objectives are clear, then it becomes much more easy to define success and failure. And usually, success becomes much more achievable, and usually you will become much more successful.
Next up, is it more important to be nice or be honest? And that's going to Dean.
So is it more important to be nice or to be honest? I think that this depends upon the scenario that you're in and the circumstances that you face. I don't necessarily believe that you have to choose between either one. You know, I think it's possible to be nice and to be honest at the same time. Working in events in a very highly strung, emotional situation often, especially on wedding days, when you have all sorts of stuff going on, you sometimes find yourself having to, I guess, make that decision of, you know, what kind of feedback do you give to your team? What's the best thing to say in this scenario? Could the words you use kind of suppress or calm down the situation, or could this escalate the situation? I often find that being direct, being polite, and having a reason for why you're saying something really helps kind of remove the opinion of whether something is nice or not. I think it comes down to whether something is required in that situation. So being nice or being honest, it's a difficult balance, especially running a business, especially having a team. But when you are a leader and when you focus on communication, you can often do both at the very same time. And that's all for me. Thank you.
Next up, how do you know that this is real life and not a dream? And that's going to Linda.
Thank you, Melody. How do I know this is real life and not a dream? I do sometimes wonder. I wake up in the morning and I've had a dream, and it's usually a huge relief that it wasn't true. But is this here now real life or a dream? Am I really a Trojan with all these lovely people? Am I having a lovely dream? It's not a nightmare. And I don't really know. I don't know if I wake up soon and think, oh, that didn't really happen. I really had a boring evening watching TV or something. So how do I know it's real life and not a dream? How do I know it's real life and not a dream? The old thing is is that you pinch yourself, isn't it? You pinch yourself, and if you can feel it, then you know it's real life. And I'm pinching myself just now, so I'm thinking, yes, this must be real life. You're all real, I'm real, we're here now. Table Topics Master.
And our last question is, where would you rather be right now? And that's going to Shah.
What was the question?
Where would you rather be right now?
At home, sleeping. Good evening, fellow jurors. Where would I want to be right now? It depends in the context of now as in the time frame. Like now here with you guys. Actually, I kind of enjoy it. I would rather be here. But it's now as in the moment in my career, I'd rather be somewhere else. So it depends on the context where you want to be, and you can create your own sort of destiny. Go for it. If you want to be somewhere, make a few steps towards it. Slowly and slowly, surely you'll get help along the way. You'll have this sort of push along to make you go towards where you want to go. So it depends on your mindset, 100%. If you have your mindset on where you want to be in 5 years' time, make yourself that goal. Make short, intermittent goals beforehand, and slowly but surely you will definitely get there. So where I want to be right now is exactly right here. And thank you.
That's it. I thought everyone did really well and coped very well with my 3 o'clock questions, so thank you.
Thank you, Melody. I'm shortly going to ask you to vote for your best table topic speaker, but to remind us of the topics and the times, please welcome up Rob Morrison.
Time quiz. Time quiz. All ears, get ready. I think we'll get this one actually. Time is the school in which we learn. Time is the school. Oh no, it's the fire in which we burn. Bit dark that one. Delamore Schwartz. Anyway, moving on, as they say. So time, so we had 5 table topics. The first table topic was Yiping, and it was 1 minute 43. Next we had Johan, 1 minute 53. Dean, 2 minutes and 3. Linda, 49 seconds. Linda, 49 seconds. I don't think I've ever said that before. And lastly, Chef, 1 minute 5. Madam Toastmaster.
Yeah, a couple of minutes.
Oh, okay.
a distinct lack of use of the stage. We seem to be scared of moving from one side or the other. Secondly, eye contact was a major problem this evening. Several contestants were staying on the floor, looking up at the sky, looking to the side, but not giving them one-to-one personal interaction. So one final comment is hands in pocket. I personally find that a bit of a no-no. It does suggest an element of disrespect to the audience. To protect the innocent, I will not mention names, I'll just give you a candidate number. Third, candidate number 1. Answer the question, which was unusual. Table topics is a good excuse for you just to go off on a frolic of your own and make something up. Initially, I found candidate 1 rather static. Hand gestures were limited in range, but they actually seemed to emphasise what she was saying. A lovely smile, which was engaging, and that has quite a disarming gesture, because if you don't know what you're talking about, you smile at people, I think they have some sympathy towards the pressure that you are under, and appreciate more and are sympathetic with what you say. Pen in hand, again, sign of perhaps insecurity. You don't need props. Candidate number 2, hand clasping, eye contact, static. But when you are static, actually that's when I found you gave the most considered response. I felt that when you were walking from side to side, using those extra seconds to think, what am I going to say? How am I going to bring things together? Which spoilt the speech I received to a certain extent. Although it was phenomenal, I just wish you could perhaps have static a little bit longer. Also, we don't have the audience at the sides. At least not yet anyway. Victim number 3. Hand in pocket. Hand clasping. Your hands, if you're clasped together, you can't use them to emphasise the point that you want to make. You can't bring the audience together. You seem to create a barrier by doing this. Relax. No one's going to shout at you, no one's going to scream at you. I might, if I could get it in private. I also felt that at times this candidate was not addressing the audience, but actually talking to themselves. They were sort of static and looking down. It was almost, I'm having a conversation with myself. I'm in a locked room, no one's going to listen to me. It doesn't matter what I say. But it actually does make a great deal of difference to what you say and how you say it and to whom you address it to. They did have an engaging smile, which again can be disarming. Number 5. This is normally our queen of table topics. But today I think it was a bit of a bad day. Perhaps because India lost at cricket. Normally regal and confident on stage, I found the eye contact again was not there. It was a case of looking to the side, looking up, a little contact with the audience. A good use of body language to emphasise points made, but I found that this individual again was rather static. And being as experienced as they are, I expected far more use of the stage, even perhaps talking one-to-one with them. The final victim, hand clasping, static. The only positivity I got from them was their smile. They seemed to be almost like
a deer in the headlights. Again, don't like that. You've got 2 minutes to have a good time. 2 minutes where you can BS, black, lie. It's rather ironic to run a church. But I do it every time I answer table topics. Get away with it. Stretch yourself, stretch us. Do something you've never done before. You'll get positive feedback, some negative feedback. The negative feedback can be just as important as the positive. Madam Toastmaster.
That concludes our evaluations this evening. We're going to vote one more time, but can I ask Robert Morrison to come up again one final time for his timekeeper report?
Time quiz number 3. Might be the last one. Ready? I'd like to at least see someone put their hand up and try this time. So, time is the most useful thing a man or woman can spend. Stephen Hawking. It's close. Theophras. Very philosopher, no doubt. Anyway, times of evaluators. Alan spoke 3 minutes 37. Nish, 2 minutes 53. Johan, 4 minutes 13. And Simon, 5 minutes 30.
More study, please, on time.
Evaluator and, to the usual, amount of collective voting groups.
So number 1,
Alan.
number 2 was Nish, number 3 was you, and number 4 was Simon. Oh, don't worry about it. That's good enough.
Okay. Well, general evaluator has popped out, therefore we can't evaluate the next bit until he comes back, so I'm just going to talk about something else. Alright. Almost back. So we have a Toastmaster for the next meeting. The good news is we've actually got 3 speakers for the next meeting, but now I need 3 evaluators to evaluate those 3 speakers. 3 speakers are going to be Cam, Paula and Simon. Any takers, please? David and Lewis. Thank you very much. There you go. Happy days. Right, so moving on to some of our reports. I'd like to invite back our grammarian this evening, Linda White.
Thank you, Rupert. Thank you, everybody. You didn't disappoint on the language front. Lots of really good and interesting uses of language. And of all those devices that I mentioned earlier, repetition, alliteration, similes and metaphors, which do you think was used the most? Repetition. Repetition was repeated. There was a lot of it and it was very well used. I'll mention Tanuja's repetition. He talked about the noise. Noise from social media, noise from our mind. It really rammed home the fact that we deal with a lot of noise. That repetition was really powerful. And then later he said, your brain is saying, what am I going to say next? What am I going to say next? What am I going to say next? There's the emphasis on the busyness inside our minds. That was really good use of repetition. David also used repetition lavishly and When he said early on about leadership, I've always believed, it showed us that he feels really strongly and passionately about leadership. He used other repetition. It enables people to. He used that phrase 3 times in a row, really rammed home the message. But one of my favourite repetitions of David was when he used the word shattered. It's a strong word and used repeatedly. It had real impact. He said, it shattered my faith in his leadership. Absolutely, utterly shattered it. The pace was fantastic. You just saw David's faith shattering to the floor. He used someone else's repetitive quote so effectively, and it was so good I do want to repeat it, but inspire people to dream more, to learn more, to do more, to become more. Amit also used repetition in his speech. Early on he said, why have we a standard time zone? Why did someone think of having a standard time zone? It really got us thinking, and that was of course using another rhetorical device, the use of questions which engage the audience. There were some other interesting uses of language that I don't really have a name for in the table topics. Dean talked about a highly strung emotional situation. I usually associate highly strung with people, but highly strung when applied to a situation really conveys the tension and the pressure. And Jacques finished his table topic with, where I want to be right now is exactly right here. Using that word right in 2 different ways was really impactful and a lovely way to finish the table topic. I do have recommendations about using a pause instead of and ah, instead of so at the beginning of a sentence, as Johan touched on in his evaluation. But there wasn't not that much to recommend, just mainly commendations. Commendation to David and Tanuj for using the word of the day, salubrious, David about the venue, and Tanuj fitted it in beautifully to his speech about you find a place that is salubrious to practice mindfulness. But my absolute favourites were the use of similes and metaphors. They were metaphors actually. Tanuj called the mindfulness techniques a guiding light. You can just see the light in the darkness leading you and helping you. Really, really liked that. And David talked about testing boundaries. And he said, he described how he does it. And he said, I bump against walls to see if they move. And I could almost see David bumping against the wall and just trying things out and pushing them as far as he could. Really, really fantastic simile to describe that. Thank you all for the use of language, which was impactful and really made your speeches sing, if that's the right word. Thank you.
The next meeting, if Irina is available, David and Tanuj, I would like her to be table topic master, because she needs to lead the way in terms of the activity for this new project. But I'll leave that with yourselves. Okay, now for a bit of fun, and I do see some sweeties as well. Please welcome back up our Harp Master, Cam Baines.
So, I hope you've all been listening. Just going to say something quickly here. So my cousin was meant to come along and bring some sweets. She's not feeling well, so she didn't come along. But the universe works in wonderful ways. And Melody brought in sweets because she was meant to bring them in last time. So they've actually come useful this time. So I might have to bring the sweets for next time. So it might be a pay it forward thing. We'll have to see. It might be a new tradition. I'm really grateful for these. Thank you for saying it. Do you mind helping me out? So I've been listening. I've got a few questions. If you raise your hand, if you know the answer. And then Melody will check your suit.
It's not my forte.
Okay, so who volunteered for the role of Toastmaster for the next meeting?
silence.
Yes, it does. Well done. Okay. Listen is an anagram for David. Woohoo. How many different styles of leadership are there in the pathway manual? 8. Okay. Well, just because you spent showing leadership, you just shout that. Okay. Name 2 of David's leadership styles. You've already been Johan.
Authoritarian and democratic.
Yes. You said it in a French accent, so I had to think of it. Okay, what time did David wake up? Simon?
1:30?
Yep. A few more. Name one of David's favourite leaders.
Simon Sinek.
Sorry?
Simon Sinek?
Yeah.
Because mine too.
Simon Sinek.
Simon Sinek. Which speech did Tanush complete today? The number speech.
Number 6.
Yes, correct. How many clubs do we have in the area? Remember, you can't answer that question, sorry. Linda? 5, yay! I feel like I'm being very democratic. I think I've been given one in almost every one. There's still time, 2 questions, so. How many time zones did Anne talk about?
24.
Sorry, you cheated there. Okay, it has to be to you, sorry. Last question. Name the animal Melody mentioned in a tabletop topic question. Oh, your hand went up.
Yeah.
Yay! Welcome everybody, welcome for listening.
Thank you very much. Bit of energy towards the end of the evening. Okay, so one of the reasons I've been on about filling roles this evening, apart from the fact that we need to fill roles for meetings, is a few months ago we did what we call a Moments of Truth workshop. And one of the outputs was we wanted general evaluators for our meetings. And I'm sure our VP will confirm that actually we've got quite a few high calibre visiting general evaluators coming in the next few meetings. There's no point in them coming if they don't have anything to evaluate. Okay, so there are still a few more roles for the next meeting to fill, and I'm going to defer that to Craig, who is our Toastmaster, to fill them. But for now, he has stepped in last minute to be our general evaluator this evening. Please welcome up Craig Wolf.
Madam Toastmaster, fellow Trojans, and welcome guests. This evening I have the pleasure of being your General Evaluator. For those of you who are not familiar with the role of General Evaluator, it's really simple. I have the opportunity tonight to evaluate those people who haven't been evaluated yet. In essence, that means I'm going to be evaluating 9 different people tonight in the different roles that they've fulfilled. So let's kick off. The very first person I'm going to evaluate tonight is our Toastmaster. The lady that ran the show all night and kept everything on track to ensure we finish on time and kept smooth transitions between each of the various speeches, evaluations, etc. First thing that springs to mind when I think about Rupa and her role tonight, it was very accomplished. Rupa, this is not her first rodeo. She's done this role and many other roles like this before, and her delivery, her comfort on stage, she's very salubrious in the way that she comes across and at her ease on stage, and that really sets, I guess, the tone for the evening. I think that controlled delivery is very strong, but she also has the ability to think on the fly. If we think back to the start of the night, we were 1 speech short in terms of, you may have not been aware, but someone was arriving late and she was able to quickly think on the spot, say, Craig, can you be the general evaluator tonight? We'll have 2 speeches instead of 3. And then she was able to work that in later than when the 3rd speaker arrived. In terms of a recommendation for Rupa, a little bit challenging, but I'm going to just try and flip her strength on its head. I want to stretch Rupa a little bit more, because I just think if she gave herself maybe 10% more to just try to be a little bit more animated, a little bit more vocal variety, and a bit of humour, which is difficult for many of us to throw in there, that I think will give her the challenge that she needs to just step out of that little comfort zone where she is very accomplished and just goes through the motions somewhat on a very polished performance. In terms of the timekeeper tonight, Rob, I think, did a wonderful performance. I think one thing that comes to mind when I think of Rob is smile. Whenever I see Rob up on stage, and tonight's no difference, he starts with a smile, and it's almost like a mirror image as an audience member. I feel like smiling back. So he's got me from the outset. What Rob did really well tonight as a timekeeper as well is he just didn't go through and say, hey, I'm going to just tell you about the functional parts of the role. He instantly kicked off with a quote, it's better to be 3 hours early than 1 minute late. Questionable, I know, but not a bad way to start an evening. He also then added in a quiz, which for some reason didn't quite connect, but I love the fact that he threw a quiz in there and he rounded off with a quote at the end. So he really showed a sense of preparation in terms of the role tonight. We now move to Linda the grammarian, and the things that strike me with Linda is her energy every time she comes to the stage, and it's a lesson to us all. She's on it straight off the outset, and she can lift a crowd. The other thing that strikes me with Linda is her attention to detail. She outlines distinct examples about what she's going to evaluate through the night, gives an example. What she's going to evaluate, gives an example. And what do you know at the end of the night? She gave copious numbers of examples, which is great learning for us all. In terms of recommendation for Linda, I love the word of the day. I love that it's front and centre. It's there for us to see. Just a small thing for me, I like to see a little definition, even if it's a small one, and smaller font below that. Because sometimes when we hear the word of the day, it's something we hear and then we can kind of forget what does it mean, or I'm not going to try that because I wasn't quite sure. So that would be just the only kind of recommendation I would have for Linda. Moving on now to the Heartmaster, Cam. When I think of Cam, I think of warmth. She wears her personality on the stage. So that kind of warmth, that kind of way that she has a nice delivery style, really sets a calmness about things. I think it was a challenging one for Cam tonight, as we saw later on in the piece, whereby she wasn't sure whether she had any treats. So there was a sense of, she even said it, unsure whether I've got this. There was a bit of and ahhing. And then she moved into what she wanted to say. What she wanted to say, she gave a good example around how we multitask today with our phones and things like that. I would actually recommend she starts off, and similar to Rob, starts off with that quote. Today we multitask with our phones, we're not having the opportunities to listen. Tonight it's my role as Heartmaster, and then go into it. It'll be just a nice little introduction to get us going. In terms of the evaluators for tonight, we'll start with Alan, who evaluated Tanuj. And for me, Alan has a real presence when he's on stage. There's something about Alan when he talks, I want to listen, and I think he really grabbed the audience in terms of what he had to say. And a lesson that I can take out of tonight in particular, when I do evaluations, I sometimes go away from what I'm meant to be evaluating on each speech, and I just go off and evaluate. What Alan did tonight, he was very clear on the devices, the 8 devices for Tanuj, very clear on the detailed suggestions that he was giving, and then he went through it. So we evaluated the speech according to what you're meant to evaluate, so it's a lesson to us all. I have no recommendation for Alan. I thought that was a very good evaluation. Next up was Nish, who evaluated David, and Nish has a very comfortable delivery style, and what I liked about Nish from the outset is she came up with a personal story to kick off her evaluation by telling us from the moment she joined Toastmasters, her kind of journey with David, what she's learned along the way, that kind of personal learning experience, and then went into the evaluation of the speech, which I thought was a nice real connection, which was a little bit different to your typical evaluation. Overall, a very nice delivery. I think she connected well with the audience, and a really strong evaluation. The next evaluation was Johan on Amit, and kudos to Johan. He came in last minute to pick up this evaluation, which is always a tricky one. But I think he did a really good job. He had a really strong structure. You remember at the start of the evaluation, they got 3 objectives. 1, 2, 3, and he went through what those objectives were. So as an audience, we were clear from the start how we was going to evaluate. He's a really relaxed delivery style, which I think really is nice. It's nice as an audience member to see that. A couple of recommendations I would say for Johan is notes. I've got notes up here, and sometimes they can be a little bit of a crux. We rely on them a bit too much. So use them as a support, as a reminder, maybe just a key word, but don't get lost in that, because then you lose that connection with the audience. The other recommendation for anyone who's doing an evaluation is sometimes we can make the mistake of talking to the audience member directly, and you're talking to them as opposed to talking to the audience. I felt that at times there was that kind of direct that connection there, which means the audience can switch on. So just remember, everyone, that's your connection when you talk about the evaluation. Coming next was Melvin, in terms of the I find the best table topic nights are the ones where you find table topics are both challenging and interesting, to get that combination to really make it fun and engaging. What I mean by challenging, when you get someone up there, they're a little bit uncomfortable, then something comes out, and they're able to make something really interesting of it. And I think she really hit the mark tonight with a lot of the table topics that she came up with. My recommendation to Melody would be just to start off with a bit more of an intro at the outset. You're going to remember what Lisa said for the first time, remind them what table topics is, remind them that you're going to be up here for 1 to 2 minutes, push yourself for a minute, you know, red light, green light, just some of the basics up front, and then roll into those table topics. But overall, a really well run session. Table topic evaluator, who better to do the table topic evaluations than arguably the best table topic evaluator, table topic person in the club, that is Simon. So Simon found a really interesting style from the outset. He came, which was different to what I'm used to, with a broad evaluation. He said, these are 3 things I noticed from the outset. He mentioned eye contact, he mentioned the lack of the use of stage, and he mentioned something else in terms of these are 3 things kind of that broad, and then he went to narrow it into each individual. Now, my recommendation to Simon, and it was almost military style, candidate 1, candidate 2, which I thought was quite interesting, and adds a bit of humour. However, we've got to remember when we're doing table topics as an audience member, sometimes there's 6, 7 table topics, and they're so hard to remember what the audience member was. If you say candidate 3, and if I said to you, anyone know who candidate 4 was tonight, we probably would get lost. If you're struggling on that, you might want to say candidate 4 did this topic, and then we can slightly make that connection. But there was a miss on the topic and the name, and therefore it just rolled one into the other. Now, despite that, really good recommendations. I would just perhaps recommend, in the break, go up to the table topic master and say, hey, who are your list of people you're doing? What order are you going to call them out at? And just simply write them down. It's a real time saver, and you'll sort yourself out when you do get up here to do the evaluation. I believe that is it. I think it is. I was surprised that is it, but that was a really nice night, really good opportunity to do general evaluator. I highly recommend it to others who have done evaluations before, who want to stretch themselves and try something a little bit different, or even go to another club. So I went to another club recently in South Kensington. Hannah's been to another club before, also that club. Not only is it interesting seeing how other clubs operate, you're also putting yourself out of your comfort zone by going in to listen to speakers for the first time and to do that type of evaluation. I'm going to toast myself.
Okay, my work here is almost done, but I have a bit of a shameless plug. It's been fallen into my lap to organise an event on the 20th of July. So if anybody is free on Saturday the 20th of July, sadly it's a little bit out of the way, Windlesham Golf Club, the opportunity to hear 3 of the best speakers in the south of England. Sonia Astley, a lot of you already know, who came 2nd in Europe this year in the International Speech Contest. Daniel McGill, who is visiting our club, granted, came 1st in the District Humorous Speech Contest. And our final speaker, Aditya Mahaswara, he has actually been to the World Championships on 3 separate occasions and came 2nd in 2015. I have 1 complimentary ticket for a member of Trojans, but other than that, through David, I'll make sure that you get the booking link. Okay? But I shall hand over to close the evening, your president, David Hall.
Thank you, Rupert, for reminding me that I had an announcement to make as well. I was contacted by a chap who runs humorous speaking courses. So if anybody's interested in learning the art and skills of humorous speaking, please reach out to me and I can give you the details. The course runs over near Hendon, and I think it runs over 4 weekends. And Toastmasters get a discounted price. So if you're interested in learning more about the art and skill of humorous speaking, please do give me a quick shout. So, on to my favourite part of the evening, the awards. We'll start with the best table topic. Can I have a drum roll, please? The best table topic goes to Dean. Drum roll, please, for our best evaluator. Goes to Simon. Whoops. Yeah, that's the right way. Cool, thank you. Well done. And finally, our best speaker of the evening goes to Ted. Super, well done. And my final hint of the night, and I'm a living example of it, don't try and shove down a sweetie quickly before you're about to come on the stage, because I ended up swallowing it the wrong way and nearly killing myself. But thank you everyone for coming. I hope you had a wonderful evening. For the guests, we'd love to have you come back. If you want to find out more about membership, we've got some information about membership. But you're welcome to come back again, and we look forward to seeing you. And to the members, you're always welcome. Good night.